Welcome back to the Real Estate Investing Fundamentals Masterclass. So far, we've covered mindset, deal flow, estimating repairs, evaluating deals, financing deals, rehabbing deals, and today and really this week, we're going to be getting into the money part. Like today, we're going to be talking about income generation, how to make sure that you make money on your deal, you actually profit from your deal, and you use multiple exit strategies to minimize your risk along the way. But first, I want to share a little bonus session, really just highlighting the benefits that starting a real estate investing business offers you over traditional businesses. And some of these advantages include instant equity. We're buying properties at a discount, which means when we're buying the property, we're getting instant equity and we're able to leverage OPM, other people's money, to do that. And when you're following these fundamentals and you're buying the properties cheap enough, you're able to use 100% financing, 100% of OPM, other people's money, to buy high quality real estate assets and get instant equity along the way. And we have an unfair advantage in the marketplace because you're out there, you're rehabbing these properties and you're putting them on the market for sale or for rent. And with a property that's been freshly remodeled, it is going to have an unfair advantage over most of the other properties that are going to be on the market because yours is new, or at least it looks and feels new if you did a good enough job on the rehab, versus even upgraded homes that are on the marketplace. They still, I mean, they may be actually lived in because they could be occupied at the time, but even if they're vacant and they have some upgrades, they still look used and looked lived in. They're going to have that normal wear and tear that you would expect to see in a home that's been lived in. But you have an unfair competitive advantage because you just did a fresh remodel. And hey, new, fresh, it always appeals better to prospective buyers and tenants. And then there's the asymmetrical risk versus reward, which really comes along to mitigating that risk with multiple exit strategies to make sure that your risk is really low and your reward is really high. And then last, lifestyle design, being able to really build this business around what you want. I mean, if you want to be all in the trenches and have a huge house flipping machine, like my wife and I built, you can definitely do that. If you want to transition or maybe from the very get-go, build more of a passive type of business where you just have this huge rental portfolio and you can really run that business from pretty much wherever you want in the world, you can do that too. Now, I mean, surely savvy entrepreneurs can do this with some traditional businesses, especially like e-com and stuff like that. But there's still a lot more risk with traditional businesses that you don't necessarily have here, because at the end of the day, real estate, there's really not many situations where a piece of real estate is going to go to zero. It just doesn't happen because real estate has intrinsic value. People can live in them. And if you're following the fundamentals, you have that asymmetrical risk. And at the end of the day, it's just hard to fail in this business long term when you're following the fundamentals. So no matter what exit strategy that you choose, if you've executed the fundamentals properly, you've set yourself up for success. You've set yourself up for success, and you just have to play the long game. And part of that comes with pricing, which is, now we're going to get into the money-making part. At this point, when you're at the pricing part of the stage, you found a good deal, you've already evaluated it and realized, hey, look, this looks like a good deal. You financed it right. You've rehabbed the deal. It's time to put it on the market. So if you're flipping a home, then you're putting it on the market for sale. If it's a rental, you're putting it on the market to lease. But you have to price it right. And you've determined your estimated ARV, or after repair value, when you were doing your original acquisition and due diligence. You've already determined that. And you probably, having multiple exit strategies, you should have determined, even if you're going to flip the property, determined what its value is to sell, but also its value to rent, just in case, remember? But you have to run comps again because things change, the markets change, and you really want to get it right in order to make sure that you have a successful, all the way through a successful deal, full cycle. You have to run the comps again. You're looking at the recently sold and leased, if you're renting, sold and leased transactions that have these are the new transactions that you didn't see before because they hadn't sold yet. But you're also looking at active inventory. Now, some of the times, like when you're checking comps again, you can be surprised. And some of them, it's a pleasant surprise where, hey, several different transactions, like new comps have been, there's new comps that you can look at. And it may give you some data that, hey, I think we can sell it for a little bit more than what we were originally anticipating. It's always a fun surprise. Now, there's other situations where maybe, and a lot of this depends on how quickly the market's moving. In a strong seller's market like we had during COVID, that was very relevant. And we'd see that all the time where, hey, I don't think we're going to actually list it for like $20,000 more. That may not be common. It's definitely not common in every market, but you could see situations where maybe you don't want to be as aggressive on the pricing. And that usually comes from there's more inventory in the market, especially when you're doing your initial assessment and you're evaluating the deal and you see there's like 3 actives on the market, but there's a whole bunch of solds. You make your valuation assumption based on the solds, but you're looking at the active inventory too. Now you go look, you're running your comps again, and you see the solds, but you also see that there's 7 actives on the market. Does that change how you, at least how aggressively you can get with the pricing? It should. It should definitely at least cause you some pause. It doesn't necessarily mean that you can't be aggressive, but just knowing that, hey, there's 7 other properties, those are your competition. And a lot of this depends on like, what do those properties offer? What's their pricing? What's their features? How close they are? Do they have any other nuances? So you're really just taking all this data in to figure out what your final price is going to be when you're putting on the market, your final price to sell or lease or whatever your primary exit strategy is. And you really never know, because this can go the other way too, where maybe there's 3 homes on the market, like I said before, active when you purchase the property, but now there's none. Like, does that impact how you, at least how aggressively you can price the property? Doesn't necessarily mean you just go crazy about it, but yeah, it could mean that there's you could push the comps a little bit and maybe even set new comps, which is always great when you set a new comp. On executing your strategy, actually getting it on the market. You have a few different options here. The first one, like, I just want to get this out of the way. FSBO, like for sale by owner, for rent by owner. Let's just no, we're not doing that, right? At the end of the day, and I'm very aware that there are resources out there where, yes, you could put things on the market, FSBO for rent by owner, and you can actually get a property rented or sold without the use of a real estate agent. It's definitely possible. But at the end of the day, the more eyeballs that are on your property, the more possibilities you're going to have for offers or applications in the case of a rental. So the more eyeballs means more offers or applications, and the more of those you have means you have a much better chance of getting a higher price. It's just the law of numbers. And the way the market is set up right now, the way to get that is through the MLS. And you're only going to get on the MLS as of today, and unless things change in the future, the only way you're getting on the MLS is by working with a real estate agent, a real estate broker. So don't do FSBO, don't do for rent by owner, or at least you can. Just know that it's almost a certainty that you will be selling the property much less or renting it for less than what you could if you put it on MLS. Now, working with an agent on MLS, you really have 2 options there too. You've got your discount agents, and then you have your full service agents. And then there, I guess, some blends in between. But for the most part, you've got your flat fee folks, and then you have your full service folks. With flat fee, really it's kind of, you get what you pay for. There are some good flat fee agents, and I've known some like high quality agents that they just happen to work with flat fee brokerages. I know them, but by and large, at least in my experience, agents that are with flat fee brokerages are because they're either part-time or they're just not doing a lot of business. And the best way for them to keep their license is to be at a flat fee brokerage, because it doesn't cost them anything. So, or very, very little. So you kind of get what you pay for. Really, to get the the best value, in my opinion, full service agents. This is really what I've used over the years. Even though I am a licensed agent, the agents that I've used for listings and or co-listings or whatever have been full service. And I just not only appreciate their expertise and the fact that they're more hands-on, because I want that, because that buys back my time, right? If I'm paying them to do something, I want to make sure that they're doing it to the best of their ability and they have the experience and resources to do that. Ultimately, get me more money, right? I want them to get paid, but that's because they got me my result too. So I've never had a problem writing commission, because if I write a commission check, which, I mean, you're not writing the check really, it's all out of closing. It's because I got a check and I'm I'm very okay with that situation. Now, you want to develop strategic relationships with the agents. I guess a little tangent here. So I mentioned I'm an agent. I got my license. I was an investor first, got my license later on. And that was really, it was advice from another investor who's flipped well over 1,000 houses. So he's an investor. He's only an investor. He doesn't represent anyone, I guess, other than his company to buy and sell houses. But he basically just said, hey, look, if you're going to be in this business long term, if you're going to be in the business long term, then be a professional about it. Get your license. It can only benefit you. And that was very contrary to a lot of the other advice that I was hearing out there, that, oh no, it's going to slow you down, or opens you up for litigation, or you have to disclose. I mean, look, at the end of the day, if you have to follow the law anyway, whether you're licensed or not. You can't be fraudulent. You can't not disclose things. So having a license, in my opinion, it only really elevates the situation for me, because I can just be more transparent and let them know, hey, I'm licensed by the state of Texas. I'm not someone who just took a weekend boot camp that's trying to steal your house. And I would use some phrases like that. So when that person came behind my back and tried to make an offer, radar was up for them. But really, this is just a side tangent. You don't have to have a real estate license to be successful as a real estate investor. It's not required. But I think if you're going to be long-term in this business, either you or someone on your core team, maybe a spouse, business partner, or whatever, should have their license. I think that's smart long-term. But if you are going to be using other agents, you want to develop very strategic relationships with them. And one thing agents is like if you're an agent out there working with buyers and sellers, then you may work with the same client once or twice throughout their lifetime, maybe more in unique situations, but it's not too common. Maybe 3 times, like if they're going to move 3 times. But a real estate investor, you've got volume. And when you're buying and selling 5, 10, 20 plus houses a year, say you're buying 20 houses a year, that means you're buying 20 houses a year, but you're also selling 20 houses a year. Depending on if you're buying some of those on MLS, most of them are probably off market. That means you are selling 20 houses a year. That's a lot of volume, and it's a lot of commission, and it gives you a lot of leverage where you can negotiate volume discounts, because as a repeat client, you're very valuable to the right agent that understands your business and how investors work. Because not only does having a lot of business help the agent, just financially it helps the agent, but also just being very busy and having a robust business helps them naturally attract more business. But also every single listing is going to help them get buyer leads, because there are buyers that are going to be coming through those listings, interested in those listings, and they're not going to have an agent representing them. And that's where they can, especially if they have a team in place, they can capture those leads. That's very valuable to a listing agent. And someone who has volume, you can negotiate discounts, and that's going to be very valuable to the agent that you end up working with. Local presence matters too. Even though I'm licensed in the state of Texas, I can list a home anywhere in Texas. I just need access to the local MLS, but that doesn't mean I should. And there have been situations where we flipped homes, even in the Houston metro area, where I'm a part of the Houston MLS, and there have been situations where we bought a unique house in a certain submarket that I knew an agent that was an absolute expert in that with that particular type of home in that submarket, and I used them in some way, whether they were the listing agent, a co-agent, or I just had them do open houses. I used and leveraged their expertise to help me with that transaction, and that's definitely what I encourage you to do, because local presence matters, local expertise matters. It helps you move inventory faster. And then niche agents, and really this is kind of maybe a side point to local presence. You have your niche agents, commercials, owners finance agents. There was an agent that I still work with to this day, because she's just an absolute rock star with lower income buyers, especially buyers that helping them get access and teach them about programs for like down payment assistance, both from the city level all the way to the federal level, and various different loan products, and working with like buyers that do like rent to own type situations, so she can tie these knots together and help me sell a property. So it's great. I get to sell a property. I've leveraged her expertise with her type of market and the buyers that she works with. So get to know these niche agents, both niche in various marketplaces, but also niche in category, commercial, owners finance, low income housing, Section 8, those kind of things. It's going to be very robust long-term in your business, allowing you to move inventory, but also you'll get leads, because when you're sending them business, who's going to be first, like top of mind when a unique situation comes up? Someone's got to sell a house quickly, like this week, and they know you do that. Like, you're going to be top of mind. They're going to call you. Hey, got this guy. They need to sell a house. They just inherited it and may go to foreclosure, or whatever the situation is. Can you help them out? Like, sure, like you're going to get that. So it becomes a very good like win-win situation for everyone. Now, photos. Don't go cheap on photos. Like, this is mind-boggling how I'll see investors spend so much money buying a property. Like, even if you're financing 100%, like so much time and energy and effort and money put in buying a property, going into the rehab, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 in the rehab, and they use their iPhone for photos. Like, I get it. Smartphones these days, like they can take really good pictures, but they do not compare to professional photography. They don't even compare. Don't go cheap on photos. Get professional photos. The only exception that I would make here is if you're like wholesaling a property and it's meant to go to other investors. So if you want to kind of highlight that, hey, this is a kind of a fixer-upper, or it's all trashed out and that kind of thing. All right, you don't need to spend your $150 on professional photos for that kind of property. But if you're targeting the retail market, professional photos, like no exceptions, professional photos, just do it. And if you're working with a full service agent, they are probably paying for this. At least in my experience, they always did. So let them get the professional photos for you. And also consider not just photos, but aerial photos. These, especially with higher end homes, or if it has a larger lot or something good about the area, where an aerial photo would highlight pools, things like that. Virtual tours. This is huge, because especially during COVID, when foot traffic really fell off a cliff. Virtual tours are powerful for a lot of reasons. It lets folks really kind of experience the property without being there. So especially for buyers who aren't local, like if you're moving from California to Houston, or wherever your market is, if you have out of state buyers, they can actually tour your property without physically being there. And in some cases may even make offers without physically being there. So it's powerful. And I recommend doing this on pretty much any property you have that's medium price point and up. There are cases where I've even done it for rentals. And then you can use Matterport. It's definitely the more expensive option. And your agent, depending on what you've negotiated with your agent, they may include this too. You can also, they have apps and devices that you can get where you can do 3D virtual tours with your phone. It's not going to be the quality of Matterport. With virtual tours, at least from what I've done, I found the quality for virtual tours with, I have a little device where I do it on my iPhone. That quality is good enough. for a virtual tour. Now, if it's a higher end home, I'm definitely getting like legit virtual tour with Matterport. But you can probably get away with some of those other devices at scale if you want to do this. But again, if you have a dedicated agent, they probably are going to be covering this for you. And then last, video tours. With video tours, higher end homes, yes, there's definitely some value there. Medium price point, lower end homes, I never really did it, with the exception of maybe investor homes like wholesaling, where it just allows for greater understanding of what the scope of work would be. Same with virtual tours, gives them a greater understanding of what the scope of work, so they can do all their estimates in advance, and you don't have to worry about option periods and stuff like that with wholesale properties. So with photos, the reason why you want to get professional photos is quality photos equal clicks. It means they're clicking on your listing. When they click on your listing, that's what results in showings. Showings create offers. Offers lead to cash. So photos to clicks. Clicks equal showings. Showings, offers. Offers, cash. That is the flow chart for it. That's why you want high quality photos. Don't go cheap on it. And it also helps brand yourself, because you can you have your high quality after photos, and you should have some before photos too. So you're able to create really good slideshows in these before and afters that you can post on your website or put on a credibility kit and show these to potential private money lenders or other partners that you may want to work with in the future. And it's just a great way to build credibility. Now, staging is very effective. A fully vacant home that's been remodeled looks great, but it is somewhat difficult to visualize, at least for some people, to visualize how furniture and layout, how that would really look once it's done. Staging solves that problem, because you're basically illustrating, hey, this is what your home could look like. This is why when you go to model homes, they have like everything staged. It looks gorgeous. So full staging, very effective, but rarely necessary in my opinion for the medium price point type homes. Higher end homes, there's definitely an argument to make where full staging might be worth it, because it is expensive. It's effective, but it's expensive. So for higher end homes, you might get the ROI out of that. In my opinion, light staging or virtual staging is the MED, minimum effective dose. Now, virtual staging is done with a photography, which means you don't need to do anything in the home. You can just get virtual staging done, and so they'll take the pictures, and you've seen these where in the photos they have they've used AI and stuff like that to imprint furniture into the image, which high quality virtual staging, it's hard to tell the difference. But there's also some low quality virtual staging where it looks very fake. So if you're going to get it, make sure it's a very high quality virtual staging. But you could also go with light staging, and this is really what we did most of the time. Light staging has some decor items, plants, couple wall hangings, fruit and towels hung. We'd really do this in the main area. So kitchen, living area, entry, maybe the breakfast or dining area, and then maybe the bathroom. And that was about it. Just very, very light, like something you could probably, if you just had one truck or like an SUV or whatever, all of it would fit in that very easily. But I was not doing this. I hired people to do this for me. I could barely hang a picture on a wall. But it is very effective because you still get a similar type feel of staging. It's a much lower cost. Still has a good impact on just being very welcoming and showing how the room and kind of highlighting how the room would be. And you could also do virtual staging on top of that. Now, one other thing I will say on staging, if it's an odd layout, then this is where spending more on staging, at least for that particular room, to show how that particular room could be utilized, it might be something worth considering. And we've had to do that before for homes that had just kind of a weird layout, that if you were just walking in, you were like kind of unsure, hey, where would the couch go, where would the TV go? And this is where staging can kind of help people visualize that. All right, so let's run down the checklist. This is for listing a flip. So first, because you've already rehabbed it. First, we got to run through the comps again. We're going to run through the comps, figure out what the price is that we're going to list it at. Sign a listing agreement with our agent. Then if we're going to be doing staging, we need to be doing that prior to photos. Now, if you're doing virtual staging, then obviously that'll get done after photos. But if you're doing physical staging, do that first, then get photos. And then there's maintenance. Just because you listed the property doesn't mean you're done with the property. Like, you can't just list it and forget it. Doesn't work that way. You have to check on it at least weekly. Dead bugs love vacant houses. So whether it's you, a contractor, someone needs to go by and kind of check these things. Dead bugs, sweep them up, lawn care. So still have your lawn person go out there and keep the yard nice. Dirty foot traffic, like footprints all over your laminate or hardwood and tile, like someone's got to clean that up. Making sure the doors and windows are locked, because I can't tell you how many times, despite the fact that they're using agents to get in the home, it's strange that somehow they leave and there's like the back door is left unlocked. It's very annoying, but it happens. Someone needs to check on these things. So just because you've listed the home, you still need to be doing these weekly checks to make sure that one, the property is maintaining its condition and it's very welcoming and clean and accessible, but also secure. Now, renting a rental listing is mostly the same. Still looking up your comps, setting a price. You have your listing, getting photos, you got your maintenance, and then the last part really is management. And this is the part where you can self-manage or you can go with a management company. I've always self-managed, with the exception of the multifamily properties that we've had. Single-family properties, we've always self-managed. If you have a full-time job, I don't recommend self-managing. Like it's a lot. And really, if you want to scale, if you want it, a rental property to be passive, going with a third-party management company is smarter. It's going to be a lot less headache. So I recommend that. And if you live in a primary or secondary market, like large metro areas, there's probably flat fee, like high quality flat fee management companies that you can hire, that they'll do it for $100 a month, maybe $150 a month, as opposed to the traditional 10%. So you just got to figure out how you're going to manage it. You're going to self-manage it, which you want to stay on top of landlord-tenant law, or are you going to hire a third-party management company and of course get referrals, do your due diligence on them, and you still have to manage them, because no one's going to manage your property like you would, or at least no one's going to care about it like you would. So even if you get a third-party management company, you still want to stay on top of them and follow up on reports and stuff to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And then wholesaling. Now, wholesaling, this really wasn't ever a big part of my business. We've wholesaled a few properties, but at the end of the day, wholesaling revolves around good deals and good buyers lists. If you have a good deal and you have a good buyers list, then you're going to be able to get the property sold. It's that simple. Doesn't mean it's easy, but it is that simple. And that really revolves. I mean, we've talked about finding good deals. So if we're going to circle back around to how do you find and how do you build a buyer's list? Well, it's the same way that you find good deals. You market for them. Networking events, social media, working with investor agents. Like, agents are really good. They're like agents that work with investors. They're great to work with because they know typically multiple investors in a particular marketplace. And it's like a compound effect, because one agent may know like 20 buyers. That's really good, right? And then also you could swap lists with, as you're building lists, swap lists with other investors. I do add a little kind of asterisk to that. You don't want to swap lists just for email blasting, like trade lists with someone, then just go blast their email. I don't recommend that, because it's a good way to get your email like flagged to spam, and that's really, really hard to recover from. So if you're going to swap lists, you want to delicately nurture that list, whether it's from some type of burner email account, which I've never done that, or calling them or emailing them individually one by one and getting to know them and figuring out what their interests are, or are they even still buyers, and then adding them to your primary contact list. Now, no matter what your exit strategy is, your primary exit strategy, you always have to have a plan B. Like, plan A is great until it doesn't work or it's not working like you thought it would. And that's where a plan B comes into play and becomes very helpful. Multiple exit strategies, or another way to say it is like multiple income strategies. This just helps minimize risk. And when your risk is minimized, that means your profit can be maximized. Though the biggest way to destroy your profit is to not minimize your risk. That means your risk can keep falling, and you don't want that. Or where it can fall, where now you're not only losing or not making money, but maybe even losing money. You want to have multiple exit strategies, and it helps you ultimately maximize the profit on every single deal, but overall as a business. Now, when you're getting offers, and this is refers to flipping or wholesaling, but primarily here I'm talking about flipping. A couple things to look for. And this isn't an exhaustive list. It's more of the highlights of these are the things that I look for very quickly once I receive an offer, a contract. I'm looking for these things. I just want to see what these highlights are. And then if I'm getting multiple offers in, especially in a very competitive environment, I have a offer comparison spreadsheet where we'll break these bullet points out, and it helps me really compare to see which offers are stronger. That's ultimately going to sell faster and net me more money. So first is financing type. Are they cash, or are they using a third party financing, which can be, from a wholesale perspective, hard money loan, private money loan, some type of investor banking. But when you're flipping a house and you're selling retail, it's probably going to be either conventional, FHA, VA. There's some other nuanced loan products, but those are by and large what what most buyers will have. So I want to know what that is. Like, at the end of the day, like, two offers, everything else being the same, one cash, one financed. Cash is king. That's one less thing that I have to worry about falling apart. I don't have to worry about their financing just falling apart or getting delayed. Cash is certainty. And I want to get if they have cash, I want proof of funds. But if they're using financing, I want a pre-approval letter, which more on that in a second. But ultimately, cash is king. Now, sometimes cash comes in lower because they know they're strong. They know cash is strong, and they may be lower. So if it's, say, $10,000 lower than the finance transaction, that financed offer, is that worth it? Is that certainty worth it? Maybe the answer is yes. Maybe the answer is no. It kind of depends on the situation and how quickly you need to sell, and also how competitive the particular deal is. Now, with a pre-approval letter, there's pre-qualification and pre-approval. You want a pre-approval letter. And more specifically, on that letter, it typically indicates whether it is based on written or verbal communication from the buyer. I'm looking for the written to be checked, meaning they have actually submitted their financial statements, their W-2s, their tax returns to the lender, and they've looked at all that, ran it through their initial filters and algorithms to figure out, hey, yes, they are pre-approved based on the information that they've submitted over to us. Not verbal, because verbal typically means, hey, yeah, we've run their credit, but they say they make enough money, we just haven't seen anything. I don't want that. I want them to have already submitted everything over to their lender. That's all been pre-approved. They've also ran their credit check, so they know what their credit score is, and everything looks good up to that point. So if you're going to be considering a financing offer, you definitely want a pre-approval with all their documents already have been submitted to the lender. Down payment, how much are they putting down? Now, they're like you have VA loans. Those are 100% financing products where the VA buyer can buy a home with no money down. That's a great benefit for veterans. Then you've got conventional loans, which are going to require more money down. FHA really is probably the next thing over VA, where maybe 3.5% down. So how much money are they putting down? At the end of the day, It doesn't necessarily matter, but it kind of does too. It's not necessarily the money down that I'm personally concerned with. It's how much money they have in cash available. Because if they're not putting any money down, it doesn't necessarily mean that they don't have cash sitting in their bank account. They could just be taking advantage of, say, they're a veteran and they get 100% financed, loan product. Why not take advantage of that? Keep their cash, safety net, or whatever else they got going on. That makes sense. And if I could make those numbers work for me, yes, I would do that. But there's also a situation where if they're doing no money down or 3.5% down FHA, they just don't have any cash. So they have to do no money down because they don't have any cash. And that's what I'm more concerned with. It's not the no money down or the 3.5% down with FHA. It's what cash do they have available? And this really comes into play is, what if the appraisal comes back lower than the contract price? Like, who's covering that? If they don't have any cash, there's only one person that can cover that, and that's you. Are you going to be willing to come down in your price to make that deal still work? And maybe the offer is so great and there's not really a lot of options where that answer is yes. And that's okay. But in a very competitive situation, this is a conversation you want to have. What if the appraisal comes back a little bit lower? How's your client's financial ability? How strong are they to cover that gap? And it's a conversation worth having. It doesn't necessarily mean that no money down or very low down payments, those kind of buyers are bad, but you want to kind of fill out that situation in advance. Earnest money, 1% is fairly common. Obviously, the more earnest money, at least the projection is they're more committed, but that really is kind of subject to the option period too, because during the option period, they can really terminate for pretty much any reason, and unless some other specific thing was outlined. The option period, 7 to 10 days, is common, at least in taxes. In very robust, like during COVID, we saw sometimes like 3-5 day options and sometimes no option, which is insane that a buyer would do that from a retail buyer. But we we definitely saw that. But 7 to 10 days is common. You as a seller want that to be short as possible. Buyers want it to be as long as possible. So you're gonna have to figure out what makes sense. Closing date. How soon do they need to close? And are you okay with that timeline? Like, maybe they need to close in 60 days because they're going to be out of the country for work and they can't get back in to actually sign documents. Like, maybe that's a situation, or there's some other situation where they have to sell their house and you got to sell your before they can close on your particular transaction. These are things that you just want to consider. And then last is seller contribution. This is somewhat related to down payment, but not always. A lot of times, if they don't, if a buyer doesn't really have a lot of cash and they're using FHA or a VA loan to maximize their loan to value, then they may also be asking you for seller contribution to help with their closing costs. And it's not that I'm opposed to seller's contribution. It's how does this how does this offer package look as a whole? You just want to know what that story is and then compare them and see what makes the most sense. Now, post-contract, you've already accepted an offer. A couple things to consider. Pre-inspection walkthroughs. The buyer, they're almost certainly going to be having an inspection. If they're smart and they've got a good agent, they should be having an inspection. You do not need to be there during the inspection. There's no reason to. I've never been there during a buyer's inspection. So what you want to do is just you or someone else need to go buy the property a couple of days before the inspection, just as a final check. You're really just kind of like taking care of those low-hanging fruits, making sure there's no like dripping faucets, all the utilities are on, making sure the outlets are working, all the light bulbs are working, things like that. Just go ahead and take care of those low-hanging fruit items, because the inspector is going to do what they're trained to do. They're going to write and mark every single thing that's wrong with your property that is not to today's code. And it's going to be a lot. Like, when you're flipping older houses, it's a lot. It's going to be a 50 to 100-page report. And you just need to hope that the buyer has a good agent that's able to kind of walk them through that process and, let them, help them out with that reality. And, hopefully they don't get freaked out. So if you've done a good flip, a good job on your rehab, then even though it's a 50 to 100 page report, there are going to be things that come up. Then it's probably not going to be anything very surprising, at least not to you. But at the end of the day, if you do a pre-inspection walkthrough, some of those items you can just go ahead and take care of. Negotiate requested repair items. So buyers will typically come back with one of three things. They're going to say, hey, look, we had these items that were on the report. We want you to fix these things. Or we want you to reduce the price by this amount because that's how much it's going to cost us to fix them. Or we want you to give us, increase the seller contribution to cover this amount. Or I guess the fourth option would be a blend of those. Now, you don't ever really want to lose, you don't ever want to lose a deal over an inspection report. So if the buyer is being reasonable, work with them. There have been very rare circumstances where I've had them say, here's the report, fix everything, or we're terminating. Like, okay, look, they're just not going to do that. It's not a brand new house. So those we let walk. But as long as they're being reasonable, typically my response to it is, hey, what are your buyer's top items that are the most concerning? So if they've got like 6 or 7 or 8 things on there, or 10 things, like if they've got a long list, I want to know what their top items are. And those are the ones I'm really going to be focusing on. So some of the stuff they'll put on there, and some of it's kind of a tactic where they'll put some things that don't really matter. And and some of the stuff, like you can kind of sense like, all right, this is kind of a joke. Like they're really reaching for some of the stuff, but you want to figure out what are the items that are the most concerning to them. And a lot of times it's going to be structural type items, electrical, plumbing, and then you got roof, foundation, those kind of things. Which roof, foundation, that part, like you shouldn't really have these issues because you've kind of you would have known that during the rehab phase. But electrical things can come up, wiring in the attic, especially if it's an old electrical panel, things like that. Plumbing, some things you might not have seen if it's like a slow drain. You should have seen most of this stuff, but these things can come up. But that's usually going to be buyers' biggest concerns, is overall usability and then these structural things. And you really want to figure out, hey, look, like figure out a way to get this solved. Now, you can meet in the middle, you can just agree to it, or you can tell them to take a hike and like you're not accepting anything else because you have so many other offers. But my advice is find a way to make the deal work, because time is money and you already have them under contract. So if you can come up with a reasonable compromise, find a way to make that work. Now, sometimes it's I've actually done this before where they're like, hey, the inspection said like the roof, it's very old. They're saying it's 16 years and we need a new roof. And I'm like, okay, well, how much are you thinking a new roof is going to cost? And they'll say, well, we've got a bid, because usually they're getting bids at this point too. If they've got a good agent, like got a quote, $7,800 for a new roof. I'm like, okay, now you made this offer, but knowing that this was an older roof, like that was already known. We have the seller's disclosure. So you knew this was an older roof. You're saying it's $7,800. So why don't we just increase the price by $7,800 and then we'll go ahead and replace the roof? And I've actually had them agree to that, knowing that I can get the roof done for $5,000 or $5,500. So I made a little spread. Now that part is kind of rare. I've had that happen. Usually it's a little bit closer to it where it's more of a wash, but I'm okay increasing the price to go ahead and take care of a repair item. So I've done that before. And then also there's the, sometimes with an inspection report, I'll preempt the report or the results of that report by saying, hey, look, you asked for $4,500 in seller contribution because you've given a strong price, but you've also asked for the seller contribution. We've accepted that. Now, I just want you to have your buyer to understand that price, that seller contribution, we're taking in consideration with any type of repair request. So if they've got the seller contribution, they come back and they want like $6,000 in repairs done in addition to that, then I'm like, well, hey, look, we're already giving you $4,800 or whatever. What's more important to your buyer? And just have these conversations. Most of the time you can figure out a good solution to get past it. And again, a lot of this, it depends on the market cycle. If it's a strong buyer's market, then you may have to be a little bit more flexible. Strong seller's market, then you may be able to strong arm the buyer a little bit more into being flexible with you. Now, with rental properties, getting applications, first, you need to know landlord tenant law. They're different in every state. Like you have federal laws, but there's state laws that are different. And you also could have some cities that have some extra rules. So really, you need to be accepting the very first applicant that meets your written criteria. So have written criteria, make sure that criteria complies with your city, state, federal laws, rules, ordinances. And the first applicant that comes through, like you need to accept that. And as long as you're doing that, documenting everything, then you should be good. Now, if you got a third-party management company, they're going to be doing all this stuff for you. But you what to look for: completed application. Completed application. Tenants are notorious for sending like 50% completed applications. I want the whole thing done. Like if they don't know something because it's irrelevant to them, type NA, like write NA. I want the whole thing done and it needs to be legible. I want a copy of their driver's license and social security. Now, again, so know your laws. Like I can get that. So I want a copy of their driver's license and social security number. This helps prevent fraud. It's not foolproof. It could be a fake, but it helps prevent it. It makes it a little bit harder for them to be fraudulent. Then I'm going to compare those. I'm going to compare the accuracy, make sure their address, their date of birth, their name spelling, their driver's license number, social security number, all that, make sure that matches the application. I'm going to run a background check. I'm going to verify employment by sending, like actually reaching out to their employer, verifying that they're actually employed there, how long they've been employed there, they're making the money that they said that they were making, also verifying their rental history, their current landlord, and also the landlord prior to that. And then I'm questioning inaccuracies. If there are inaccuracies, I want to know what the reason, and there could be a reason. But a lot of times it's, they haven't quite been as forthcoming. It doesn't necessarily mean like automatic disqualification, kind of depends on what it is, but definitely questioning those and seeing how they respond. Because ultimately, we want to rent the home to the first applicant that qualifies like as soon as possible. We want to get good tenants in there and get them paying rent, and hopefully they stay there a long time. But you don't want to let deadbeats in there that are going to lie and be fraudulent on your tax return. And there are apps out there, and it's not difficult for tenants to come up with fake employment verification and fake W-2s and all this stuff. One extra thing that I could have put on here too, and I've had a property management company tell me this, is not only do they look for, they want the W-2, they want the actual pay stub for the most two recent, maybe 4 recent payments that they've had from their employer. And then they're, again, checking and verifying that with the employer. But they're also wanting a copy or a screenshot of their bank statement that shows the exact amount of those transactions hitting their bank account. Because there are tools out there where some tenants have been able to make fraudulent pay stubs. So just kind of keep that in mind. Success with profit. Like, look, it's hard to go broke if you're making money. Like if you're actually profiting off of your flips and rentals, you got net positive cash flow and all this, it's hard to go broke. You can just blow it all and spend it all. It's just harder to do. Like you have to actually try to do that. So make it as simple as possible. Like know your numbers. Like you really, if you're following all the fundamentals and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, it's just going to be hard to fail. You should be making money, should be profiting. And when you know your numbers and review them frequently, now I'm talking comps here, and review them frequently. When you have properties on the market, like things change. And if you have a property on the market and average days on market, it's like maybe like 21 days and it's been 35, like, hey, it's a good time to go back and review things. But really, you want to be reviewing that stuff in the first week, second week, third week, and review it on a weekly basis to see what's going on. Maybe 3 other properties hit the market. And that's why yours is sitting there a little bit longer, because buyers have more options. So review everything frequently, make adjustments accordingly, and then take what the market gives you. And don't hesitate on taking what the market gives you. So I made this mistake once where the market was giving me something and I really thought, hey, no, I should be making more. But instead, that market was just a little bit soft and I wasn't seeing it. And it ended up being a pretty headache of a flip because it took forever to sell when I should have just taken what the market was giving me on the front end. So uh, don't be afraid to adjust, make adjustments, take what the market gives you, shift when you need to shift. Maybe you need to just go ahead and stop with your primary exit strategy, go to your backup exit strategy. Now, this works really well with going from a flip to a rental where you're not making your $40,000 flip. It's just the numbers aren't working anymore because it's taking longer. Something happened. Maybe that makes sense to go ahead and rent it out for 3 to 5 years. And then you sell it for not 40 at that point, but probably 50, 60, 70, 80,000. Don't be afraid to make those adjustments. So this wraps up the income part of the masterclass. There's just one more session left. One more. Session 8, we're going to be talking about wealth building. And in that section, I'm going to show you a simple plan of action that you can use regardless of how long you've been in this. So like if you're brand new or you've been in this business for a while, a simple plan of action that you can use to build a multi-million-dollar portfolio. And you could even do it in as little as 2 years. So you don't want to miss it. I look forward to seeing you then.